Hello, good afternoon. It's Wednesday, April 9th, and I am Rob, that developer dad, and we're back to working with C Sharp and .NET, extending the capabilities of the DM's familiar. I want to build a encounter runner, sort of an initiative tracker that I can use in my D&D sessions, and I want to expose that as a capability in the DM's familiar. And as I was kind of thinking about encounters and how they get planned and brought into game sessions and so on and so forth, I realized that it's just another kind of game content. So I've kind of pivoted a little bit temporarily and stubbed out this concept of game content hierarchy or a game content object model. And let me share my screen here. Boop, here we are. Now, I didn't get the things done that I wanted to get done between streaming sessions because I had band practice last night and I had my subcontracting work that I do this morning. But what I want to start in on is creating the ability to filter the different kinds of content that I create. Right now, the filter is just going to be very, very rudimentary. I'm just going to pass in a user ID, and it's going to return this. This version of the query is going to return all of the content that the given author has created and saved in the cloud. Now, I've got this same method set up to be implemented on both location and narrative element access. Now, I don't believe I'm fully saving any, well, I haven't got any creation stuff set up yet, but I'll get to that. That's sort of just rote code generation that has to happen in between sessions, and I don't have anything going on this evening or later this afternoon, so I'll probably take care of that tonight. But I'm getting close to the point where I want to use a proper UI for it anyway, and that means plumbing down to a manager and then an API wrapper, and then finally we can start building some client components in the very near future for this stuff. So I think what I'm going to do is, instead of dealing with writing the same kind of code here as I will in the location and narrative element access components, I think what I'm going to do is create a constructor first off, and it's going to accept a connection string. Connection string and a logger. We're going to need to pull in a couple of namespaces here. There we go. I need to set up a private static or a private read-only. String access connection. We'll assign that to access connection. And I need a private read-only logger nullable. There we go. And I'm not going to bother creating a table service client or anything like that in here, because what I'm going to do is set up a private read-only location access of location base and we'll set up a narrative element access from narrative element base. I got to pull in that namespace as well. All right, And then out here, well, in the constructor, I better set these guys up. So application access equals a new one of those. And I can't pull in a logger, a materialized logger here. So what I got to do is I got to bring in a logger factory. And instead of assigning logger to logger, I'll go log factory dot create a logger for content queries. Is that how I want to do it? I thought there was a create logger generic. Let's take another look. There. I don't know why that's being a silly git. All right, and I actually need to come out to location access and take in a log factory. Logger factory. There we go. Do the same thing over here. Create logger. There we go. And we will say if you are nullable. Otherwise, it just won't create a logger for me. And I'm going to do the exact same change over here on my narrative element access thingy. Logger factory. Yep, that's what I want you to do. There we go. Cool. Save. And we've still got some compiler warnings hanging out on these things. I'm not concerned about those yet. And I've got all of these concrete types open, and I really don't need those. Now, the content queries I do need to set up. Log factory. Yep. And I got to set up narrative element access. There we go. And all I'm going to do is create a list of filtered game content results. It's a new list of filtered game content results. And then do we have a concurrent list? No, that's okay. Now, I need a list of task of there we go. And I'm going to use the shorthand for this constructor. There we go, because I've explicitly declared the type of the variable here, so I don't have to say new big long thing, because that's a big honking thing. So all we're going to do here is go tasks add, and then I know what I want to do, but I'm not quite sure of the exact correct syntax here. So what we're going to do I've created a collection of async tasks that each returns the same kind of thing. What I want to do is fire those tasks off in parallel, and as each returns, handle the results by either copying the payload into the results variable, or copying any error messages into the op result errors collection. Now, before I do that, what I got to do is set up op result enumerable filtered game content results. That's our result. This becomes payload. And I'm going to shrink all of these declarations down to their narrowest form that I can. Groovy. And result.payload equals payload and return result. Save. This needs to become async. There we go. Now it's still going to grouch because I'm not performing any asynchronous operations yet, so it's going to return synchronously. So what we got to do it's the parallel execution and awaiting that I'm a little foggy about. Can you help? Okay, cool. Yeah, that works. Now, this will work because I don't want to stream the results back as they arrive from each of these tasks. Yeah. Now, if I wanted to stream each of those results back as they arrive from the tasks, I'd have to do things differently. So we're going to keep this task result.has errors. There is no has errors on there. So it was successful equals false. And I believe I might have result.copy, task result dot copy errors to result. Now I think I have to pass the same type. No, I just have to pass it as a reference. Now let's make sure. Go to the definition here. And because the task results are the same kind of object, each task will send back an operation result that contains an IEnumerable of filtered game content results. So I can get away with this. I've got another one. I've got another version of this copy result or copy errors to method that actually can copy the errors from one type of op result to another type of op result. I can actually get rid of this. And then, because the collection types for the payload are exactly the same, we can do that here as well. And our test.payload equals payload, return result, groovy. So let's save this. Now, right now, this is going to do nothing. Because we come up to filter content in the location access class. I believe, here it is. It's not implemented. And I want to come over to narrative element access. And instead of doing all of this stuff here, instead of doing all of this goo that I'm doing, although this is pretty darn close to what's happening. You know what? I think this is okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take location access and I'm going to add a reference. I'll just let it look at all the open editors. So please update location accesses implementation of filter content to be equivalent to what's happening in narrative element access for the same method. Now this I don't mind asking AI to do because I'm just I'm automating the process of cribbing similar concept stuff with different details from one code entity to another. Yesterday, if you were watching, you would have seen me actually struggling with the AI quite a bit to kind of bend it to my will to get it to do some things that should have been fairly elementary, but I was just having a heck of a time getting the prompt right. We're going to keep this. We're catching exceptions. Our result.payload is a new list. This is all fine. And I believe for now, we are still dealing with, it's not actually doing any awaitable things. But out here in content queries, we ought to be all good by now. Okay, so I want to test this. Now, in order to do that, I do have a game content test harness. I'm going to pop open program. what I want to do, I want to alter the main menu prompt. And this is becoming prompt create locations. Groovy. Now, static string main menu prompt. Action, print menu. I'm going to do this. Contains input false. R is repeat. Return Q. I'm going to say P, previous menu. This needs to go to handle create location input. Create content instance doesn't exist. You're out of here. I've got some very grumpy code up here. Public string main. Okay, not all code paths return a value. That's fine. Console dot write line 1 is list content. Two is create locations. And then run main loop. This is main menu prompt. I'm also going to need to static, string handle main menu. Wait, I'm goofing stuff up. That's a void. Static void handle main menu input string input author ID access CN. List content, create locations logic here. Invalid selection, groovy. Now, run main loop. Main menu prompt. Excuse me, goodness. This goes to static void. I don't think it's a static void. It's a string. run location, create location loop. I don't need any of that stuff. What are you complaining about? Not all code paths return a value. Input. Gah. Return. Input. Now this handle create location input. I need to pass author GUID, author ID, string, access connection. Pop that down onto its own line. Okay. This becomes run create location loop with that stuff. I've got an awful lot of very grumpy code in here. Main menu prompt, not all code paths, return a value. That's right, I gotta set up the prompting logic there. Console.writeLine, not ready yet. There we go. Now, prompt create locations. That's right. So, up in the main menu prompt, Apple I, look at the code in prompt create locations and do the same kind of logic here as we're doing there, but for the items in this method's print menu. Accept. All right. Return input, return Q. Q is quit. Save all of this stuff. And what are my problems on this file? Active file only. So main menu prompt is declared but never used. Whoops. And Apple I use main menu prompt to get the user's intent and execute it until the user selects the quit flag, which is Q. That looks pretty good to me. Save. Let's build everything. We'll rebuild everything. And I just want to test and make sure this stuff works. Now, I don't know if I have any. Oh, I do have some locations. Cool. So we'll come back here because I don't have a launch profile for my console app. I'm just going to go debug, start new instance. There's that. Okay, so let's test item number 1 first. It should just say not ready yet. Cool. Let's go to create locations. And I'm going to say a country. Remnants. A verdant region that has been magically created and sustained in the middle of a desert wasteland. Council of Enter country kind. It's actually a freehold. Government type is a council. Okay, now that should be up in Azure now. I'm just going to pop open a new Safari window and open the portal real quick. I'll do that off screen. Because my internal chief information security officer has scolded me over and over and over again about even showing usernames for cloud services and so on in a live environment. So let's see here, storage browser, and we'll go to tables and locations. And let's pull over here. We have 4 locations now. 3 of them are silly. I just, as I was testing, I created Narnia and Fillory and Whitespire and all of that stuff. Narnia and Fillory and Whitespire are not my creations. Narnia, of course, is C.S. Lewis. Fillory is, oh gosh, Lev Goldman, I think, is the author of The Magicians. Great series, by the way. We just finished watching it again on Tubi. Remnants is my creation. And we see that it's a country, it's a freehold, we've got the details, so on and so forth. So we've got things to list. Groovy. So, over in the File Explorer, there's my program, content type scripts. All right. I'm going to set up another new folder. And I'm just going to call it support classes. And I'm going to add a new file, and it is going to be a content filter support. These are all just temporary classes. I'm going to blow this console app project away in a little while. Not today, but by the time I'm done testing all of the things that it makes sense to test, I'll be doing that. So, content filter support, it's a class. It's going to need a private string access connection. It's going to need a constructor that accepts that string, connection string, access CN, and public async task enumerable filter game content result. We'll pull in this thing. Op result, we got to pull in the framework. There's all this stuff. And instead of this nonsense, we're going to get rid of that. And we're going to get rid of this. We don't need that either. I am going to game content. Oh, golly gee, what's that class called? Content queries. Content query equals new content queries. We're not going to bother passing a log creator or anything like that. And our result equals that. This is, here we're returning that. What are you complaining about? Dot payload. There. Save. Okay. So let's see if we at least get into those access classes from here. I'm going to drop a breakpoint right here. And we'll run the console app in debug mode. And let's see here. Let's go to list content. That says not ready yet because I am a doofus. So here's run main loop, main menu prompt, handle main menu input. We're going to, now is content filter support async? It sure is. Static void. Handle list content, buggity buggity boo, listing content, and content filter support equals new content filter support. content filter. And we got to pass it the connection string. There we go. Rename this so that I spell filter correctly, instead of having it rhyme with a horrible person. Filter content. That is a list of filtered game content results, and item ID. Category is item dot content category. Type is item dot, come on, Rob, dot content type. And name is item dot name. Yeah, that'll do. Dot right line. Save. All right, so this should invoke listing that out. And we need to call this handle list content input. We don't need the input. We just need the author ID and the connection string. There we go. And that should be happy, happy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop a breakpoint right here. And hopefully I've got my head out of my butt, so that when I make that selection in my little menu loop, it does the right thing. So let's go to list content. Here we are. So we're listing content. We're building our access filter. Let's step in. We're creating a new op result, blah, blah, blah. Content query, we're standing up the actual class. We've got it. And let's step into filter content. And we're setting up our tasks. And we'll just do an await when all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop up in here and drop a breakpoint here and here inside the two actual content filter methods that I'm kind of delegating out to. So let's just run. Actually, I'm not even going to bother breaking on narrative element. Well, no, I will. I don't think anything happened. One. Let's try that again. Okay, go. We'll run until it hits a breakpoint. Content query filter. We know we're getting in here. I'm going to drop a breakpoint after that exits. Okay, we're into location access. The partition key, we're just returning an empty thing because we're not actually running anything yet. Our payload is an empty list. Good. So we're flowing out through the call chain properly now. we're starting to get a bit of a walking skeleton happening. So let's come out to location access. We'll stand up a query. So table client.query, and this returns a pageable location table entity. And an expression func. Here we go. And I just want to pull this down onto its own line so that we can kind of see what's happening here. And right here, we've just got this. Now, E is a location table entity. Cool. And E dot author user ID equals author user ID. So that's a GUID. I don't need to call toString on the author user ID. There we go. That's my filter. Now this might, I seem to remember running into some really goofy stuff trying to do link over table entities. Max per page, whatever. Pageable. And this gives me a pageable collection of location table entities. So we're going to materialize that out to a list. Groovy. And then, if entities.count equals 0, we'll just pass an empty list into the result and return it. And otherwise, oh, what are you doing? Equals new. Let's use the anonymous constructor thingy. And I need to translate a table entity into a filtered game content result. So luckily, I just happen to have in my resource access component a class that gives me extension methods. Public static IEnumerable of filtered game content result and instead of 2 filtered game content results, I'm going to rename this to filter result. There we go. Now equals that. I am not going to pull in description. Author user ID is going to be a little bit goofy. And location type name, this will be content type. Is that. So we've got entity ID, the name, the author user ID. We don't have that. Author equals, and I'm just going to say entity.authorUserID.toString because that's a GUID. Now, what else is on filtered game content result? I'm just going to pop over here and I'm going to crib from it over here. All right. We're going to want some metadata. Created date, entity.created date. last modified date, entity dot. We don't have a definition for last modified date, but we should have an updated. No? Okay, so name, check. Author, check-ish. Created date, last modified date, content category, content type. Okay, we've got all the things that we care about. Save. Yeah. Now, before we carry on and go back out, is there any advantage to performing the conversion that I'm doing in this to filter result method in parallel? Because we could potentially be processing a lot of these game content results. Relatively simple, just mapping properties from one object to another, no I/O. Overhead of creating parallel tasks might actually be more expensive than sequential. During the operation, or if you were dealing with very large collections, I expect the average collection length to be eventually hundreds of entities. If I hit thousands, that means I've created a higher tier premium account type, and I'll likely be using something other than Azure table storage by then. And I'd be selecting these filtered game content results directly out of a database because I will have created a view for them at that point. Okay, so I was thinking I might run this as a parallel for each, but it really doesn't look like it's going to give me any advantage, because this straight up property mapping is not that expensive. And doing it in a tight loop isn't going to be a big problem. That and the calling code is async. So I'm not tying up the UI thread or anything like that while it's executing. So let's pop back out to here. Filtered results equals new. We're going to add filtered results here. Whoops. And filtered results dot add range entities dot to filter result. And what's this talking about? Collection initialization can be simplified. You know what? Let's just do this. Now, this is an IEnumerable. Instead of reading it out to an intermediate variable, let's just do that. Payload equals array.empty that. Because when your expected return type is a collection and you don't have anything, you should always just return an empty collection instead of null. If your expected payload is a single instance of a thing, then it's okay to return null. But whenever we're dealing with collections, the best practice is to return an empty collection. And I like to just, since I tend to use IEnumerable for collection return types, I could just use an array empty because in .NET, arrays conform with the IEnumerable interface. And this should give me about what I'm looking for. So let's hit this and go debug. And I will start a new instance. And we're just going to run this real quick because I want to see what happens. If it works, I will say woohoo and say see you tomorrow. If it doesn't work, I will say, oh poop, I have something to fix, and I'll see you tomorrow. But let's find out. We're fooling around and we're finding out. Let's go. We're into location access. Let's go boop, boop, boop. I have entities. Let's step into my conversion method. And let's see here. I'm just going to run down the cursor rather than step over the thing. I've got results. I'm going to say carry on. We're to the narrative for each. In task result, we are successful, so we'll add it. We're adding nothing. Continue. Our result.payload has some things in it. So we will continue. And we have a content item whose category is location, type is world, name is Narnia. We've got a world named Fillory, a settlement named Whitespire, and a country named Remnants. Woohoo! So yeah, tomorrow I'll have, I'm going to keep working on this stuff, and I'm just going to quit out of here. There we go. I'm going to keep working on this stuff. I'm going to try and get the narrative element test generator in place and make sure that I can query out those filtered game content results. And I think tomorrow we're going to start working on making that filter a little bit more robust than just filtering on the author ID. So until then, thanks for joining me. Thanks for hanging out. And I will see you tomorrow. Happy coding.